Welcome to I Feel Like.
Your ultimate guide to navigating life as a young adult.
We're your hosts,
Anna,
Dan,
and Evan.
And we're here to share our experiences and provide advice on everything from surviving college and forming relationships,
the situational etiquette, and maintaining a social life.
I feel like it's time to start the podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode. It's that time of year where lots of college students are scrambling to find summer internships. We know from personal experience how stressful and hard this process can be, so we wanted to address a lot of common questions and concerns regarding the internship search process to help you land your dream internship this summer.
This episode is part one of a three-part series about finding internships, interviewing for jobs, and acclimating to the workplace. Stay tuned for the next two episodes in this series, which will be released in the coming weeks.
So let's get right into today's episode, which is all about finding and applying to internships. Today we are joined by special guests Olivia and Deeraiya, who are here to share their experiences with getting internships and really just provide us with some additional insight into the search process in general. So I know Olivia and Deeraiya because I went to high school with them. But since high school, we've all had a lot of really different internship experiences. We've gone into kind of a variety of different fields, and we all have different kind of ways in which we got into the positions that we've had in regards to internships, co-ops, things like that. So I guess before we begin, I'll just let you guys introduce yourselves briefly. So Olivia, if you want to go ahead.
Sure. Hi, my name is Olivia. I'm currently a junior, and I'm a self-design major, combination of philosophy, poli-sci, and classics. So very different focus than you guys. Yeah, and I've had internship experience in those humanities and government sort of fields.
Yes, okay. I'm Deeraiya. I'm a senior in college, and I'm double majoring in political science and religion with a minor in South Asian studies. Similar to Olivia, I've also interned in more of the humanities type of fields. So, yeah.
Well, I guess you guys are pretty familiar with who me, Dan, and Evan are, but I guess for the sake of this episode, we'll just kind of give some background onto the internships we've had. My major is business and engineering, and I've had a couple internships working as an R&D engineer and in supply chain for medical device and pharmaceutical companies.
As you guys may or may not know, I'm in biology. I'm a science major. So I've had some internships that I've gotten in kind of hospital work as well as in the private sector in a pharmaceutical in the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, and as you know from Dan's channel, I'm a computer science major, and I've had an internship just being a software developer.
I guess a good starting point would be to talk about where to find internships or co-ops. Just, I guess, for some background knowledge, Dan, Evan, and I go to a school where they do the co-op program. So it's very similar to an internship. It's just a little longer in length than the typical 3-month internship. And we do get class credit for it, and it is a graduation requirement. So because of those reasons, our school really does help us out in finding job positions, and they really do provide a lot of resources to help us land those jobs. So we wanted to bring on Olivia and Deeraiya because they've probably had to do some more work on their end since they don't go to co-op schools. So I'd be interested in hearing from our guests how or where they found internships.
Yeah, for me, I found that networking is the best way of finding opportunities. So I had a summer internship for a local congressman, and I found that out through family friends. I think for many people, networking is really one of the best ways to find internships and job positions.
Yeah, so for me, similar to Olivia, I found out about an internship at our legislative district through one of my high school teachers, actually. And another internship I've had was for an app that basically educates students on the importance of voting, and I found out about that through Google because I was just like searching for Google like internships and stuff, not for Google internships, but but the thing is, a lot of humanities internships are unpaid, So there's a lot more options, I feel like, and they're much easier to get when they are unpaid. So like when they are paid, it's like much more difficult.
Yeah, and for the two of us, since we both had internships in government politics, um, it helps that there's always an election cycle. Like the cycle's always happening. So it's really easy to join a campaign. That's definitely what I was doing. And like what Deeraiya said, it wasn't paid, but it was definitely a valuable experience.
I'm curious to know, in your internship search, did you use LinkedIn, or did your school provide job postings or anything like that? Or were you kind of completely left on your own to make your own connections and find your own opportunities?
So the opportunity that I had wasn't through my school or LinkedIn, but I definitely know that my school has like an alumni network that always kind of updates um, the campus community about internship and job opportunities.
Yeah, for us, the head of the Department of Political Science is always emailing us about like different opportunities. So like just last week we got an email about a policy advisor position at the mayor's office for the city that our school is in. And another job that I had, this wasn't really an internship, but it was just like a part-time thing for the November general election where I counted votes for the Associated Press, and I found out about that through the Department of Political Science.
Yeah, I definitely think that using like your school as a resource is a great way to find these internships, co-ops, any position really. I know for at school that Anna, Evan, and I all go to, yes, we do have that co-op program, so we do have a lot of assistance in getting our co-ops. But on top of that, I know like the head of like my department, the biology department, they send out things where it's like, oh, like people are looking for lab assistants for this thing, or oh, this company is looking to hire some interns, or this company wants some medical scribes for the summer. So I feel like definitely if your school or your department's sending you like emails, don't just trash them right away. I would say like definitely read them because there might be some really good opportunities that are talked about in those emails, things like that.
And I think to, when you're actually at your internship, I think that's also kind of where you maybe find even more internships, making connections there and things like that. And I know we've talked about social media before, and like I've recently just gotten a LinkedIn just because I feel like that was the thing to do, just because that's what you always hear about. And part of me is regretting it because I just don't even know. I haven't barely used it, to find an internship. So I'm wondering, like, have you found use in it, I guess?
LinkedIn's like real complicated, honestly. It kind of confuses me, but I've seen a lot of stuff about like finding hiring managers or recruiters and having conversations with them, just to kind of establish a correspondence. And then I know people have asked them about internships. Occasionally, I think LinkedIn will, with their job posting sections, they will have internships or co-ops. I've definitely seen those floating around. I've never applied via LinkedIn. We really use that to get an internship, but I've definitely seen stuff like that on LinkedIn.
I've applied to some internships co-op positions on LinkedIn just because LinkedIn makes it so easy. But also, I just thought that this was like a little fun fact. I was just checking my LinkedIn as you guys were saying that, and I just got a message from someone, like not even like a sponsored message, like just like a normal message of someone saying, "Hi Daniel, your background is a great fit for this position at this company, and we'd love to set up a meeting if you're interested to talk about maybe you fitting in at this company." And it's just like, wow, like LinkedIn is really a powerful tool for making connections, obviously, but also for maybe finding these employment internship co-op opportunities, things like that. So I definitely recommend if you don't have a LinkedIn, definitely making one. Because like worst thing that happens is you just don't use it and it just kind of sits there. But obviously, I don't know if this is going to go anywhere, this random message that I just got, but it is definitely a tool that can be used in really powerful ways to be able to get these experiences.
In terms of other resources similar to LinkedIn, um, the school Dan, Evan, and I go to has teamed up, I guess, with Handshake. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but they've really pushed that, and I think that's another uh, posting site for different internships, jobs. I don't know. I've never used it, but I get an email from them like 2 times a day. So I don't know. They must have some sort of value.
Yeah, my school uses Handshake as well, and I've used it just for like on-campus jobs, but I know that they always have things for like summer internships and whatnot.
I guess a good thing to say then is to pay attention to your emails because I do get all the emails from Handshake and I definitely get emails from LinkedIn and like just staying up to date on your profile, I guess, and staying up to date on who may be talking to you. Like, don't just set up this profile and then not check it. Like, you might have to check it.
Also, just like a quick note, I'm not sure if Handshake does this, but I know LinkedIn does this because I signed up for it. But you can basically put in some information that you're looking for. And I think like twice a day, they'll send you like specific jobs that they think would be a good fit for you based off of what you're looking for, whether it be like an internship, a co-op, a part-time job, a full-time job, things like that. So that could be a pretty useful tool as well.
I wonder if people use LinkedIn as much for internships or if it's more of an adult thing to use for like getting an actual job. I wonder what the demographic is. I don't know if that's the right word, but like, are people our age actually using it for internships, or are they really only using it for jobs, I guess?
I feel like maybe a little older than us, so like more like upper 20s, early 30s, or maybe using it to like maybe find like actual like full-time positions. But I feel like a really good use for LinkedIn, in addition to everything that we talked about, is also just connecting with people at specific companies or maybe like graduates from your own college who are working at companies that you're interested in. And then by connecting with them, you can start up a conversation for you to then maybe apply for an internship, a co-op, whatever, like through their own system. But kind of having that initial connection through LinkedIn can start up a conversation to get you there in the first place.
Yeah, it's definitely so hard to fill out all those different applications on all those different websites, with each employer wanting their own special website that you fill out this thing. But LinkedIn's so great just because you can reach out to the company that way, and it's so much easier to kind of get to know them and submit your resume, I guess, ahead of time. So that's definitely just an easier way of connecting with people for sure.
As nice as LinkedIn sounds, it's definitely hard. Like you really have to be on top of it and you really have to put in a lot of effort. And since it is kind of like a social media platform, I've just seen in passing recruiters for different companies post something like, we're looking for an intern. And then there's thousands of comments that said, I'm interested. So it's definitely a ton of competition. It's probably kind of overwhelming. And I think it's one of those things where if you don't know what to do, you can really easily get overwhelmed and almost intimidated by it. So you kind of definitely have to like know what you're doing and know how to use LinkedIn. Next, do we want to just kind of give a brief overview of the search process from the beginning, which I guess would be looking at postings and finding something that aligns with your goals, to submitting the application, to hopefully being interviewed and accepting the offer and closing the deal, if you will.
Yeah, I think that would be a almost like natural way to go with this. So I guess, like we said, Anna, Evan, and I, we all go to the same school. Our search process is probably a little different than the average student just because when it comes time for co-op season, when everyone's applying, we have a database kind of releases every co-op job that companies are offering through our school at once. So we have access to literally thousands of jobs at a time that we can choose which ones we want to apply for. It's basically like online shopping. We put them into our shopping cart. So, but a lot of students probably in their 20s or in college don't have this kind of, I don't want to call it a privilege, but it is kind of a lot easier for us, I'd say, to find internships and co-ops. So I'm just curious, like specifically for Olivia and Deeraiya, like how do you guys like start your search process if you're looking for an internship or anything like that?
Well, compared to all of you guys, I go to a really small school, kind of in the middle of nowhere. So it's harder to get an internship, I think, through my school in the surrounding area, if that makes sense. Um, there definitely are opportunities, and especially now because of COVID, with things being virtual, I think it's easier. I think yeah, I know people who have internships like in DC, for instance, while being on campus. But for most people I know, it's usually using outside resources to find those internships, and usually they're the ones located at home rather than on campus.
For me, I know that I was supposed to do an internship in London over the summer, like a study abroad thing. So if you're interested in that, you could contact your study abroad office and see if there are any opportunities like that. Obviously, it was canceled, but that's a side note. And yeah, I mean, in terms of just starting a search for an internship, like I said earlier, I basically just go on Google and like search political science internship and then see what comes up.
Yeah, and even for Dan, Evan, and I, even though our school has kind of compiled a list of job openings, we still have to do a lot of work in terms of prepping our resumes, submitting it to the job, and then we have to wait and hear back if the company wants to interview us, and then if so, we have to do interviewing, and then we have to wait and see if we're a match. So it's definitely kind of a lengthy process that can be time consuming. It's definitely not easy and it's kind of frustrating at times.
Especially because you aren't probably applying to one. You're probably doing a couple, or I would hope more. But, so it's definitely, you're doing this a ton. And I was gonna ask if kind of like how many you apply to, I guess. Like I know with ours, through our school, you can only apply to so many, and they often recommend to just apply to as many as you can. So I'm wondering, is that the same for you? When you find one, you just apply no matter what? Or are you like, no, I should probably just keep it to 10 or something like that?
So for us, I think it really depends on the type of internship we're looking for. So, like we kind of said before with the politics one, they're not really going to turn you down. So, because there's always a need. I know that's definitely different for what you guys are doing with STEM. But otherwise, like I know for this summer, I applied to two internships, I think, and I have another um, paid opportunity on campus that I'm applying for. So I don't apply to too many, but that could be definitely dependent on what you're looking for.
Yeah, similar to Olivia, I would definitely agree that if the internship is unpaid and it's like for a campaign or something, I don't think that they would turn you down just because like it's free labor basically. Like it's a volunteer opportunity at that point. And I think for you guys, it's a little bit more urgent in that you guys need the credits to graduate. And for us, like, we don't really receive credits, at least for me. Well, I mean, you could, but I just don't. But yeah, so for us, I think it's a little bit less of an urgent situation. So, like, we just apply for the ones that we want. And if we don't, then, like, it doesn't matter.
I feel like for us that it's almost like a double-edged sword because I can't speak for Anna or Evan, but I know that a lot of the times, like I think for some of our co-op cycles, the max jobs that we can apply to is 25, and all our advisors say like, oh, you should be applying to all 25 and maybe even doing like independence or that. But because of this maybe pressure to apply to 25, I find myself applying to positions that maybe I'm just not even really interested in. And then like if I get an interview or things like that, for us, like we have to do all of our interviews. We can't turn them down. So at that point, it's like this is just wasting both of our times because I don't want this position. So obviously I'm not going to accept it. And then if I don't accept it, this is a waste of the employer's time as well. So I feel like it's definitely a double-edged sword being like that. And I feel like it would almost be nice being in like your shoes, like Olivia and Deeraiya, where like you guys can just apply to things that you're interested in. There's also less stress maybe with it because you don't necessarily need it to graduate.
Right. It's definitely a numbers game. I guess I like Olivia and Deeraiya said it's probably a little different with more like humanities, political science. I think it sounds like there's a lot of opportunities and it's maybe not as competitive as some of these paid STEM positions, but with our school's co-op program, you're right. Everyone's basically applying to 20, 25 jobs because everyone in the school who's on co-op is doing the same. So when there's that much competition, obviously they can't give everyone an interview So I know there have been times when I've applied for like 20, 25 jobs and I've only gotten selected to interview for maybe 4 of them. So that's like not even a fifth of the jobs I applied to, just because there's so much competition. You're competing against people who are older than you, people in different majors than you, and it's definitely tough. And I've heard stories from people who don't go to co-op schools but are still looking for paid internships, and they've applied for like hundreds and don't get anything. So I don't know, maybe applying to 25 isn't as bad in comparison to what some other people go through. But yeah, it's definitely competitive and a numbers game.
Really? Like 100? I've never heard anyone talk about applying to that many.
I mean, maybe not 100, maybe that's like an exaggeration, but I think people who have to find internships on their own and don't have the resources we have definitely face a high level of rejection.
Yeah, like I know a mutual friend of Olivia and Deeraiya and I, someone else we went to high school with. She, I think, applied to not 100, but definitely over 50 just for this summer, just because like her school doesn't have like the same resources that like I guess our school has, where like we're provided co-ops, I guess. Not provided co-ops, but you know what I mean. But like she's had the thing where she's kind of had to apply to so many just because it is a numbers game. She's just trying to hedge her bets so she'll get at least something. And I feel like maybe a piece of advice in this kind of category would be, as we move into maybe the submitting an application portion of this, would just be a big part of an application is your resume. Yes, you're filling in all your other information, probably in their database or whatever it is, but the resume is almost 99% of the time you have to attach a resume, you have to send in a resume to whatever company you're looking for. So I think that it might be beneficial just for a little bit to talk about good ways to maybe create a resume that is A, good, but also B, that you don't have to change too much. So then you can easily kind of apply to a higher number of positions in a shorter amount of time.
I feel like I just wanted to add that I also think it's a little, I don't want to say easier for us, but at the same time, it's a little nice knowing that when you're applying to 25 or whatever, that you do have this backup, like a safety job. I don't, you know what I mean? Like you are applying to some that you really want, but there's others that's like, oh, I'll apply to this just because. But yeah, in terms of a resume, I feel like it's tough because I don't want to put the work in and I don't want to change the resume for each job. But if you do get too general, then it's not gonna work. You're not gonna get it.
Yeah, like with our system, I know I've definitely just recycled the same resume and it's pretty easy to just send it out to all the jobs you're applying for. But I think in the case, say you're applying in like 25 jobs and 10 of them are ones that you are really interested in, and maybe the other ones are just kind of safety options. Maybe on your safety options, send your general resume. But I think in this day and age, and especially with COVID, there's just so much competition. You can't be general. So I think if a position that you're really interested in, you do need to read the job description and tailor your resume and your experiences to fit what they're looking for. I think if you don't, it maybe you'll get an interview, but if there's a lot of applicants, I don't know, general, you might shoot yourself in the foot with that.
I definitely agree with that. I think I'm not sure if this is a good method, so you guys can completely hate on my method if it's not good. But what I do is I kind of have within my field categories of resumes. So they all kind of have the same experiences for the most part, but how I describe the experiences is different. So like if it's, let's say it's like immunobiology lab work, I'll talk specifically about like isolating antibodies, things like that. Whereas if it's like animal models, obviously I'm not going to talk about like the immune system. So I talk more about working with animal models, mice, things like that. So I feel like a good way to kind of do that is just kind of to create resumes that have general categories within your field. So then you could be like, oh, like in Evan's case, oh, this is a job for software engineering. So I'll submit my software engineering one instead of my maybe cybersecurity resume, things like that.
I feel like what I would say for making it just to get a little more general for everyone and not this bio thing that Dan's talking about, I feel like some tips would be to read it and look for some of those key buzzwords, like looking for someone that's collaborative or looking for someone that's this, and just not, you don't have to include the word collaborative, but just driving home the point that you do work on a team, or that you do um, if honestly, it's simple. If they say that they're looking for, like for me, if they say they're looking for agile, make sure you put the word agile on it. Little things like that, just tailoring it so that you do have that skill. But of course, don't lie and say you have that skill. But
Definitely, like Anna was saying, look through the job description, because a lot of the times these companies, they don't have a person going through your resume. They have a computer system that looks through it, that picks out keywords. And a lot of the times those keywords will come from the job description specifically. It's like Evan said, if it says be agile, I don't know what job would need you to be agile. But
No,
No,
that's like
agile's
a methodology.
yeah.
oh, really?
Like
Oh,
Scrum, right? That's
Yeah,
agile.
yeah.
in my head, I'm just thinking, oh, you have to run fast.
No.
Anyway. But like if it says like you need to be agile, then definitely in your resume, put the word agile, because then that computer software will have a better chance of pairing you up for an interview.
I don't think you're getting what agile
I
means.
know.
So.
You said if you need to be agile, it's not something, it's not a trait.
Yeah.
I am not a computer science person.
What does agile mean in this context?
It's like
A workflow methodology, right?
yeah. I don't know how to describe
Now,
it.
what does
It's
that
like,
mean?
it's like
Almost around like project management almost.
yeah, it's like it wouldn't be like you do agile, you know how to agile is what I'm saying. Like on your okay, I'm saying for the resume, you wouldn't say your skill is agile, I guess. You'd say like you have worked in the agile methodology. This isn't important. No one else I don't
Yeah, this is not like an agile
the one
lesson.
computer science major listening to this is gonna care, but everyone else
Yeah, I
isn't.
think
So
that's really big in IT.
yeah.
But
Just
I wanted to ask Olivia and Deeraiya with their internships, did you have to like submit a resume and do an interview, or was it maybe a little more simplified? How was that for you guys?
Yeah. So my one this past summer, I had a resume and then I had a phone interview. But for other internships that I've applied to, I've also had to write cover letters. And those I try to get specific about, but my resume really is kind of general. I don't get as specific as it seems like you guys do.
Yeah. For my 3 internships, the legislative district, the activism map, and then the Associated Press, I basically just submitted a resume and they were like, yeah, cool. But for the London study abroad internship thing, I had to do a phone interview. And yeah, it never happened. But I got it though.
So you guys had to submit these resumes online, I'm guessing, and then you heard back from them via like email or whatever, and then they set up an interview if they needed it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As much as I hate writing a cover letter, I recently had to learn how to do that skill for my past applying cycle because for some reason all of jobs this time needed it. And I definitely found that that was a good way to kind of sell myself, just in a different way than the resume, just because I could kind of talk more about the specific job in sentences rather than like these key bullets. You know what I mean? It was definitely easier just to go into some detail.
Also, just a note, if an application says that a cover letter is optional, I would almost always recommend you doing it unless you're 100% confident that you're going to get the job regardless, because maybe you know someone in the company or things like that. But if you're not one of these 1 in a million chances, I'd say always submit a cover letter, even if it's optional, because it'll give you a chance to explain yourself more, as Evan was saying, other than just these like keyword bullets, but also it gives them a chance to see some of your work. So like, obviously, if you're submitting a cover letter, I'd hope that you put time into it, at least a little bit, to make it sound nice. So being able to sound proficient, well-spoken, things like that is huge, especially in college, where a lot of people you find can't really write that well. So I definitely say do your cover letter and do it well.
Especially STEM majors.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I'm kind of conflicted with the cover letter. I feel like I've kind of heard that they're like dying out almost. Like they're just kind of not that useful. And a lot of times the information that someone puts in them is like not really relevant, or it just like it's not needed. But I guess, yeah, it doesn't hurt to put a cover letter if it's a good one. I mean, I wouldn't submit a bad one. You don't want to give them a reason to not offer you an interview. But I don't know. I'm kind of conflicted with the cover letters. I've had to write a few. I think they were okay. They weren't necessarily like something I put a ton of time into, but I don't know. I guess, yeah, just be safe and submit one anyway.
Yeah, I think on top of that, it also shows initiative that you're willing to write one. I feel like a lot of people are just like, oh, it's optional. Nope. And I feel like a company will be like, if you're the same on paper as someone who submitted a cover letter and someone who didn't, I feel like if I was the employer, I would go for the candidate who took the extra mile and submitted the cover letter.
Another thing that I was going to talk about was I've been asked a couple times for portfolios, and I've definitely
For
floundered.
CS,
Yes.
what does a CS portfolio
We don't
consist
need to
of?
get
You have to
into
print
it.
out your lines of code and put it in a binder and give it to them.
Well, yeah, sometimes I don't want to get specific, but yeah, sometimes they'll ask for like past projects and uploading some examples of what I worked on. And I just know for me, I've definitely floundered and been like, I don't have a portfolio together. I have nothing to give you. So I would just say that before you do start looking and applying, that if you're someone that might need a portfolio, that you should probably start putting that together, and have that ready to go and send out.
Something else I wanted to mention, that Evan actually kind of reminded me of, when you're applying, definitely make sure that you look at the job description, and there'll probably be a section on what you need to do to apply. Sometimes you have to apply on LinkedIn or wherever you find the job, and then you have to apply on the company's website, or you might have to submit a portfolio, or you might have to do a cover letter. So you really want to make sure you're following what you need, because it would suck to miss out on it just because you didn't see that they needed a cover letter by this date. So just being really on top of due dates, what materials they need, definitely could help, because if they're asking for a cover letter and you don't give one, they probably won't look at your application because you couldn't follow the directions stated in the job description. So that would just be a shame to be discounted for something like missing a detail.
Also, Anna made me think of this, but if you are submitting your resume cover letter online, when you submit it, don't just save it as resume. Like put your name in the save as like name, I guess, on your computer. So like Daniel, last name, resume, Anna, last name, resume, things like that. Because I feel like I see hiring managers all the time being like, it's so hard if I'm saving like 100 resumes on my computer to figure out whose resume is whose, then they have to rename them. So you doing that, I guess, will save them some time and then put you in their good graces. Obviously, it's not going to get you an internship automatically, but I think it'll help a little bit. And I've definitely seen hiring managers say that.
And save it as a PDF, not a Word document.
Oh, really? Why?
I don't know. I just prefer PDF because then it can't be altered or anything like that.
I think also sometimes when you submit a Word document, I've definitely heard that the formatting can get off on some
Yeah.
like online databases, things like that. So PDF is just safer.
I don't know if this is true, so don't quote me on this, but I feel like I've heard that PDF is more ATS friendly, and ATS is just those computer softwares that scan resumes. I don't know. Maybe I'm mixing it up, but I know either Word or PDF is better with that software. And I think it's PDF, but
I think it's
honestly,
PDF
I
too,
don't
but
know.
again, don't quote us on this. We're not professionals.
I feel like I've always done a PDF just because of school related things where they've wanted PDFs. So that's just kind of a habit. I've been into submitting PDFs, but I think Dan's tip is really good. I've never heard that, but that makes a lot of sense. And I know I've submitted a resume to PDF, so that definitely makes a lot of sense.
I guess the next part of this whole search process would then be you've submitted everything. Now you have to wait. And then hopefully, if you're lucky, you're going to get an interview. I believe that we're going to be talking all about specifically like how to do well in your interview, how to answer the questions best in our next episode that's coming out next Monday. But just good to note that typically, unless they ask for more information between submitting your initial application, the next step should normally be finding out whether or not you got an interview.
Yeah, they should let you know. Even if you don't get an interview, you should probably be informed that you didn't get it. Like you should hear something either way. The length of time between when you submit the application and hear about the interview status is going to vary depending on the time frame, the company, stuff like that. But
Yeah, one time I applied for a job at a place that I was interning. So like I applied for like a real job there and I did an interview and like they never got back to me, but I knew that I didn't get it because they had hired someone else. But so then anyway, I went in one day and I went to the girl who interviewed me and I was like, hey, like, did I get the job? And like I knew I didn't. I just asked them because number one, they should always tell you if you didn't. And number two, I wanted to make her uncomfortable. And so she was like, oh, like nobody emailed you. And I was like, no. And she was like, oh, you didn't get it. And like here I am doing free labor for them. Yeah.
I think in a situation like that, it kind of just reflects poorly on the company. I mean, you took your time to craft a resume, or I guess you didn't interview, but you still took time and showed interest. So for them to kind of ghost you like that, definitely is a reflection of the company and maybe almost even a red flag and a reason to
Yeah.
be
You don't
glad
want
that
to
you
work there.
didn't get it. I mean, I
You're
understand
glad.
things happen sometimes. Stuff slips through the cracks. Maybe they genuinely did forget, but to not let you know is a little unprofessional, at least in my opinion. And then
Yeah.
it puts the applicant in a weird position. Like when you're 20 years old and in college and you have not been in a professional environment and you're talking to people who basically have the power or not to give you a job. I give you credit, Deeraiya, for even going in there and asking. I probably would have just like pretended it never happened because I don't have the guts to do something like that.
Yeah. I just like, I don't know. I feel like I deserved an answer.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely did. So good for you for like knowing your worth.
So I guess the next part of this process, after you've done your interview, that's all done. You normally have to wait a pretty long time after that. But just to kind of finish up this process, we're going to talk about it more in depth probably in the next two episodes. But the next two parts would definitely just be either accepting an offer if you're fortunate enough to get an offer, and then just kind of closing the deal, doing all your onboarding stuff, and eventually just starting your internship, your co-op, whatever it be. So yeah, I guess for the search process, we're definitely going to get more into those later steps in our next two episodes. So come back next Monday for that. But yeah, I think for the search process, that's about it. Unless anyone has anything else they want to add specifically about that.
I'm curious if you're offered a position. I wonder if like do interns have the power to negotiate no, I guess I don't know if I would call it a salary, but like their rate. I'm just kind of curious about that. I don't know because with our school, the pay is not negotiable. I mean, I don't know that an intern necessarily would, but I mean that would be part of closing the deal if that's what we're going to categorize it. I guess like working out the details of when like your start and end date, how much you're going to make if that's an option to negotiate or if it's even paid in the first place, stuff like if you get any time off, just
Are
kind of
those things to ask during an interview or are those things to
no,
ask
no,
once you
no,
get
not
accepted?
during an interview, like in the event that they offer you the position and you kind of want to counter before accepting and joining. But I don't know if that kind of stuff really happens in an internship because I feel like with internships, first of all, we're young, so we probably don't even know that there's an option to do that kind of stuff. And I think it's very much a situation where like, hey, I'm just glad I got something. I don't care how good or bad it is, it's something. And I don't want to like risk losing it.
Yeah, I don't know the I don't want to say procedure, the norms there. I don't know what most people do in a situation like that or if you're maybe in an unpaid internship, like Deeraiya was saying, like applying for a paid position. Like I don't know if maybe if it's unpaid, could you maybe upgrade to a paid? Like is that something you can negotiate halfway through? Like I don't know. Oh, she's shaking her head no. Okay, well, there you go. Just accept whatever job you get and stick with it, I guess. In terms of going back to like job descriptions, I just feel like I wanted to add that before um uh I don't know what to get into here. Like there's so many things. Like when you're interviewing,
Well, wait, before you move on to the job descriptions,
okay.
sorry, I just wanted to ask Olivia and Deeraiya a couple more questions before we move on. How long were your internships? And I guess, do you feel like you did learn a lot from it? Was it a beneficial experience? How many hours did you work?
For me at the legislative district, it was a summer internship, and I think we had to do like 100 something hours over the course of the summer. So you could make it however many weeks you want, as long as you did that many hours. So people were doing like 9 to 5, but then I was doing like 11 to 4, 3 days a week for like 10 weeks or something like that. So it really did vary in terms of like hours. I do think that I learned a lot because you were able to see how people have to like deal with constituents from like a not a social worker point of view, but from like a constituent, like legislative aid point of view. And in terms of my other internships, the one with the app, it was just like work whenever you want, because that was student run. So like I feel like they didn't feel like they had the authority to tell other students what to do. And then the Associated Press one was like you had to do training, so that was like 2 hours, and then all the real work for that was the night of the election, basically, which was like 10-ish hours, maybe 9 hours, because it was like from 5 p.m. to like 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, when we were still counting votes at that point. So everything's been pretty different in like that situation. But also from the Associated Press, it was really interesting because you got to see like where the results were coming in from. Like I knew by maybe like 10 p.m. that Sarah Gideon was not going to win Maine. So like it was interesting to be able to have like an inside look at that.
For my latest internship, I just did it for the summer. I know some people did it all the way to November. So I did June to early September, I think. And it was unique in that it was also very educational. Like we had courses, it was geared towards college students. So we would have like educational components led by their head people on the campaign, where we would learn about certain aspects. But overall, I think I did like 12 hours a week. It was a lot of calling different people and canvassing. So all the stuff that they don't want to do, but that needs to be done. And yeah, I think that's for most interns.
Right, that's interesting. That's kind of different from our experience. The co-ops at our school, most of them are full-time. So we worked 40 hours a week for 6 months pretty much, which maybe this could just be the jobs are different, and this was more like corporate work where your humanities internships were it's not really like a corporation, it's like government and politics. So I'm not sure if that's just a difference in an internship and a co-op, or just kind of the nature of the positions.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think also with you guys having this co-op, it's basically like you're entering the workforce in a real career, at least from what I understand of it. Whereas what I've done so far is very much just like volunteering, aiding them. Even in some of my jobs that I've had, it's very much like basic filing and scanning, such things that, yeah, like they don't want to do.
I'm kind of curious what other internships look like And if they're kind of similar in the amount of workload and time commitment. Um, yeah, just because our school kind of has it so set and we really do have to abide by these guidelines to get our credit. It's definitely interesting hearing about other people's experiences just because we're kind of like in a unique situation.
Yeah. Also, I know people at school who have internships while taking classes. Um, it is also part time where you guys are working full time. So it's a different situation when you're in class or when you're doing it over the summer versus that being your sole priority.
Right. I didn't know that there were opportunities to do internships kind of like off of the traditional calendar of the summer frame. Because I feel like when people say internship, you kind of think of like summer internship, you're out of school. So yeah, I didn't know that there really were options to do it during the school year part time. That's actually pretty interesting. And that might be a better situation in that there might be less competition since I don't know that everyone would be willing to work while they're doing school. And I feel like most people still do typically try to find something in the summer.
No, I could definitely say that I would prefer not to have an internship or job over classes. So I think if if that was something you could handle, I would definitely recommend it just because it will be less competition and just because I think maybe employers, I don't want to say they're more desperate, but because there's less people, they're probably looking for someone to fill that spot. Just because the summer's over doesn't mean the job's not there and not, they're probably still going to need someone to do that internship work. So I think definitely do that if that's something you're interested in.
Going back really quickly to what Evan was saying about job descriptions, I don't know what he was going to say, but I guess we'll give him that opportunity to share what he was thinking.
Oh, you want me to fill it in now? Um, I was just gonna talk a little bit about. I think, I think it's a little muddy, and I think we could always clear up what to take away from like a job description, and maybe if a job description suits you and like what you should do. Like I know one thing is for us, we were talking about earlier, just kind of like a safety apply. And sometimes it's like, oh, I don't really meet that job description, but maybe I'll apply anyway just because it'd be something to apply to. I gotta meet that 25. So
Right. And I think with job descriptions, when I was applying for definitely like my first internship and even my second internship, when I still wasn't really sure what I was looking for or what I wanted to do, I would read a job description and it almost like wouldn't make sense. I wasn't really getting a whole lot out of it just because I guess I wasn't accustomed to kind of the stuff they were talking about. But I've always heard people say, like advisors and stuff like that, if you can do like 40-50% of the job, apply anyway. You don't have to meet, you're not going to get discounted automatically because you don't fit it 100%. And especially in an internship kind of position, you're competing against other students. So I mean, I doubt any student has all this that they're looking for. And I've also heard that with job descriptions, they basically ask for way too many people's feedback on what this job requires to the point where all this extra information gets added that's really not even relevant to the job.
Yeah, I would definitely say when you're choosing which internships co-ops to apply to based off of job descriptions, my suggestion would be kind of do it similar to maybe how like we're all told to apply to colleges. Like sure, have your safeties that you're pretty confident you can get. Then have your targets where it's like you can do like Anna was saying, like between like 50, maybe 60% of the job description. But then on top of that, have like maybe the ones that based on the job description, oh, I'm not sure I know how to do all of these things, but maybe it'll turn out that the job doesn't even require you to really know all of these things. So I definitely say have your safeties and targets so you at least hopefully get something, but also like apply to some things that maybe if they even do seem out of reach, that maybe you'll still get them anyway.
there's definitely a difference between not being able to do something on a resume versus not knowing what something on the resume is. Like if you don't know what this is, then maybe you shouldn't apply. But if it's something like, oh, I'm totally interested in figuring out more about this, then I think, that's something that you could go into. Like if you were in the interview, be like, oh yeah, maybe I don't have the skill, but I'm really interested in this, and I could give like a little detail on it about why I'm interested in this. So I think just being aware of um, the job description and just being aware of what exactly you don't know.
I also do want to just let you guys know that um, it's an internship. They expect you to not know everything. You're doing it to learn. So they don't expect you to know everything. And honestly, a lot of the times I think the job descriptions are probably like their perfect ideal candidate, but honestly, it's probably so perfect that it doesn't exist. So, I mean, yeah, even if you don't know how to do something, but you want to learn the software or a skill and there's a job that is about that, just go for it. I mean, what do you have to lose? And they know that you're a student, so it's not like they're expecting you to be a professional who's been in the industry for 10 years.
I mean, I feel like some are expecting that, but anyway, what you're saying about just, taking that shot and being rejected, I feel like that's just part of it, dealing with the competition and, you know, uh, it they're not meeting you. Like this is before the interview. You're don't be afraid to just do it. You know what I mean? I feel like for me, it's a lot of times it's like, oh, I won't get it. So like, what's the point? I'll just do this other one. But you know, I think that's just psyching yourself out of it, and you should definitely, if you're even a little bit interested, apply to it and um, don't don't set yourself down like that. Like you're never gonna get it if you don't even try.
Mm-hmm. And kind of going with that, I feel like a good way to maybe, I don't want to say ensure that you get an interview, but maybe to further cement that you might get an interview, like with these jobs that maybe you're not so confident in, you're not so confident that you know everything in the job description, would just kind of be applying different ways to make yourself stand out. I feel like there's a lot of key ways to do this, specifically like on your resume, in your cover letter if you have to do one. But like before we finish up, like what are some ways that you guys like stand out like in your application?
Um, I don't know. I think it's really hard to be general here just because I think a way to stand out is to really make sure you're taking the time to make sure your resume reflects the responsibilities, duties, skills that they're looking for. I think that is better than submitting a general resume. But again, I think it's really hard to say on a broad level just because there's so many different types of internships that require different things. But something that I kind of just wanted to put out there is, especially in an internship, I think you kind of have to be flexible in your, I guess, goals and positions. There's just so much competition, and competition aside, I think internships are very like opportunity based. An opportunity just might not, they might not have it this year, or the internship you want might only have openings during a certain season when you're not available, and you might not get your first choice, and that's okay. This, just because you don't get your dream internship doesn't mean you're behind everyone else. It doesn't mean you can't get anything better later. And it doesn't mean that that's what you have to do for the rest of your life. So just because it's not exactly what you wanted, that doesn't mean it's not a good experience. And I'm sure you still will learn something. I think another important thing to kind of say is, as we've said before, internships are very competitive regardless of how you find them. Um, so it's important to stay positive. It can definitely be a long search, and it's definitely discouraging when you get a lot of rejections, and it can, I guess, almost feel personal, or it can make you feel like you don't know anything, which isn't the case. I mean, especially if you're new to it, making a resume and interviewing are definitely learned skills. So, like, definitely don't beat yourself up over it.
So I know that we threw a lot of advice at you guys, but we hope that the topics that we talked about in this episode will help you in your internship or co-op search process. Um, Anna, Evan, and I would like to just give one last thank you to Olivia and Deeraiya. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. If you're all interested in hearing more from them, definitely check out Olivia Deeraiya, my YouTube channel, I Feel Like Learning, if you want to hear more from them. But yeah, thank you so much for listening today. In part 2 of the series, we're going to be providing more tips and tricks specifically to nail your job interviews. So definitely stay tuned for that episode next Monday.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode.
Be sure to like and follow our podcast on whatever platform you're currently listening to it on.
Check out our social media, linked in the description, and tune in next week for even more advice.
TTYL
from IFL.
Bye!